Let me tell you something I've never said out loud. I was there the night the lights went out over Haldra Station. I was there when we sent our last message into the dark and got nothing back. And I was there, 3 years later, when the void cracked open and the humans came. People ask me what it felt like. They want a clean answer, something neat, but it wasn't clean. None of it was. So I'm going to tell you the whole thing, the way it actually happened, and you can decide for yourself what it meant. My name is Ren Velko. I was a signals officer, 41 cycles old when this started, which by my people's measure is young enough to still be foolish and old enough to know better. I served on Haldra 9, a relay station out past the Tessari border, on the edge of what we used to call the Quiet Reach. The Quiet Reach earned its name. Out there, the stars thin out. The space between them stretches so wide that even light gets lonely. We were the last lit window before the dark. A little ring of metal and glass, spinning slow, full of 1,400 souls who'd all, in one way or another, run out of better places to be. I should tell you about the Tessari since most of you have never met one. We're tall, taller than humans, though I didn't know that yet. We have 6 fingers on each hand, and we see a little further into the cold end of color than you do. We live long, we breed slow, and we don't startle easy. That last part matters. Remember it. And I should tell you about the war. It didn't start as a war. That's the thing nobody believes anymore. It started as silence. There was a people out in the deep called the Severid. Nobody had really met them. They didn't trade. They didn't talk. The first anyone knew of them was when the colony at Bellew Drift stopped answering its calls. Then the mining stations in the Oran Belt went quiet, one by one, like someone walking down a hall and closing every door. We sent ships to look. The ships didn't come back. By the time anyone understood what was happening, the Severid had already taken 9 systems. They moved like weather. You didn't fight the Severid. You found out they'd arrived, and then you found out you'd lost. I remember the briefing where they explained it to us. The officer who gave it was a woman named Tova Hess, station command, hard as a hull plate and twice as gray. She stood in front of the map, all those red dots crawling toward us, and she didn't soften it. "They're coming this way," she said. "They'll reach the Quiet Reach in maybe 2 years, maybe less. We are not equipped to stop them." Somebody asked the question everyone was thinking, so what do we do? Tova looked at us for a long moment, and then she said the word that changed everything. "We call the humans." I have to back up here, because if you don't understand what the humans were to us, none of the rest will land right. We knew about Earth. Of course we did. Humanity had come up out of their little blue world maybe 200 years before all this. Loud, fast, stubborn in a way that nobody in the older species quite knew what to do with. They'd fought a few brushfire conflicts on the rim, made a few enemies, made a few friends. They had a reputation. The reputation was this: humans don't quit. Not humans are strong. Plenty of species are strong. Not humans are clever. We had clever to spare. The thing about humans, the thing the old traders whispered about over their drinks, was that you could beat a human and they would simply refuse to understand that they had lost. You could break their fleet and they would come back with the wreckage welded into something meaner. You could surround them and they would decide, against all reason, that being surrounded just meant the enemy was conveniently arranged. There was a saying that went around the trade lanes: never start a fight with a human because they don't know how to stop one. We thought it was a joke, a bit of color, the kind of thing you say about a people you don't really know. We were about to find out. The Tessari had a treaty with the Earth Coalition, a small one, mutual aid, signed 40 years back when both our peoples were small and scared and looking for friends. Nobody had ever invoked it. It was the kind of paper that sits in a drawer for so long you forget it's a promise and start thinking of it as decoration. Tova invoked it. We sent the message ourselves from Haldra 9 because we had the deepest relay in the sector. I was the one who keyed it in. I want you to know that. I sat at that console and I typed the words that called the humans, and my 6 fingers were shaking the whole time. The message was simple: coordinates, a casualty count, the severed advance, every system we'd lost, every ship that hadn't come home. And at the end, the line Tova made me add herself, standing over my shoulder, her voice flat. We cannot hold. If the treaty means anything, come now. If it does not, then forgive us for the silence to follow. I sent it into the dark. And then we waited. You don't know waiting until you've waited for a fleet that might not exist. The signal had a long way to go, months, even at relay speed, to reach the nearest human listening post, months back if they answered at all. We did the math 100 times. Best case, a year before we'd know. Worst case, never. So we kept living. That's the part people forget. The severed weren't here yet. The war was still a thing on a map. We had shifts to work and food to grow and arguments to have about whose turn it was in the wash cycle. Life is stubborn that way. It keeps happening even when you've already decided it's about to end. I made a friend during the waiting. I should tell you about her because she matters later. Her name was Sil Marn. She ran the hydroponics deck, kept us all fed, and she had a laugh that you could hear 3 corridors over. She was older than me, missing 2 fingers on her left hand from an accident she never explained, and she had absolutely no patience for despair. "You're doing it again," she told me one night in the mess, when I'd gone quiet over my food. "Doing what?" "That thing where you've already buried us all." She pointed a fork at me. "Stop it. The humans are coming." "You don't know that." "No," she agreed, "but I've decided to believe it, and believing it makes the food taste better, so." She shrugged and went back to eating. I thought she was foolish. I thought hope was a thing you couldn't afford out here, like a luxury you'd left behind on a richer world. I was wrong about that too, but I'm getting ahead of myself. A year passed. No answer. I want to be honest about what that did to us. A year of checking the relay every shift. A year of every officer pretending they weren't checking. A year of the red dots on the map crawling closer, system by system, until the severed were close enough that we could pick up the echoes of their work. The strange, empty silence where a colony's chatter used to be. The hope drained out of the station slow, like air through a hairline crack. You didn't notice it leaving. You just noticed one day that everyone was quieter, that the jokes had stopped. That Sil's laugh, when you did hear it, sounded like she was working harder to make it. Tova called us together when it had been 14 months. She stood in front of the map again, and the red was so much closer now. "No response from the coalition," she said. "I'm not going to lie to you about what that means." Nobody spoke. "It means we're on our own. It means we plan accordingly." She squared her shoulders. "We are going to evacuate everyone who can be evacuated. Civilians first. The freighters can take maybe 900 to the inner systems. The rest of us hold the station as long as we can to buy them time." I did the math before she finished. 1,400 souls, 900 seats, that left 500. I was going to be one of the 500. I knew it the way you know cold water before you touch it. So was Sil. She volunteered. Of course she did. "Somebody's got to keep the lights on while the others run," she told me later when I tried to argue. "Might as well be the people who aren't scared of the dark." "You're scared of the dark," I said. "You sleep with the deck lights on. I've seen it." She laughed at that, the real one. It cracked something open in my chest hearing it. "Caught me," she said. And then softer, "Stay with me, Ren, when it comes. I don't want to do the dark alone." I told her I would. I meant it. The evacuation took 3 weeks. Watching those freighters fill up was the strangest grief I've ever felt. Children who didn't understand why they were leaving. Parents who understood too well. People I'd worked beside for years, hugging me goodbye and both of us pretending it wasn't the last time. There was a kid, I never got his name, maybe 6 cycles old, who refused to board without his toy. Some little carved animal his grandmother made. He dropped it on the deck in the crush and couldn't find it, screaming, his mother trying to drag him onto the ship. I found it, kicked half under a cargo strut. I gave it back to him and he just stared at me with these huge wet eyes and said thank you in this small wrecked voice. And then he was gone, swept up the ramp, and I never saw him again. I think about that kid more than almost anyone. I hope he made it. I have to believe he made it. The freighters launched. 900 souls fired off into the dark toward the inner systems, toward maybe safety. We watched their engines shrink to points and then to nothing. And then it was just us, 500, on a station at the edge of everything, waiting for the end to arrive. The Severid came 4 months later. I was on shift when the relay caught them. First it was just sensor ghosts, too clean, too ordered to be debris. Then it was shapes. Then it was a number that made my stomach drop because I'd seen the projections and the projections said we might face a dozen ships, 24 at the worst. The Severid sent 40. 40 warships, black and faceted like cut stone, sliding out of the deep in a formation so perfect it looked rehearsed. No hails, no demands. The Severid never talked. They just arrived, and then the place they arrived stopped existing. I called Tova. My voice didn't sound like mine. Command, I have contacts, 40 plus, bearing on the station. There was a long pause on the line. When she answered, her voice was very calm, the way water gets calm right before it goes over the edge. Understood, she said. Sound the alert, all hands. I'm not going to pretend I was brave in that moment. I wasn't. I sat at my console with my hands shaking and I thought about my mother back on the homeworld, who I'd never said goodbye to properly. I thought about the carved animal and the kid's wet eyes. I thought stupidly about whether the hydroponics would keep growing after we were gone, just plants in the dark, nobody to eat them. And then Syl's voice came over the comm, on the private channel just the two of us used. Ren, I'm here. You remember what you promised me. I closed my eyes. I remember. Come up to the observation ring. If we're going to watch it come, I'd rather not watch it alone. So I went. I left my post, what was the point of the post now, and I climbed up to the observation ring, the big curved window at the top of the station where you could see the whole sweep of the void. Syl was already there, standing with her back to me, looking out at the Severid fleet coming on. I came and stood beside her. We didn't talk for a while. We just watched the black ships grow. They're beautiful, she said finally. In a horrible way, don't you think? No, I said, I really don't. She laughed. Quiet this time. She reached over and took my hand with her 3-fingered one, and we stood there together at the window, watching death come, and I made my peace with it as best I could. The Severid fleet entered weapons range. And that exact moment is when the void cracked open. I need to slow down here, because I've told this part 100 times and I always rush it, and it deserves better. It started as a flicker, off to the side away from the Severid, out in the empty dark where there was nothing, no station, no star, no reason for anything to be. A flicker like the void itself had blinked. Syl saw it before I did. Her hand tightened on mine. Ren, she said, what is that? I didn't know. I'd never seen anything like it. The flicker spread, became a tear, a wound of light opening up in the black, and out of that wound. Ships. Not Severid ships, not the faceted black stone. These were different, bigger, gray and battered and ugly, all hard angles and visible scarring, like something that had been built for one purpose, and that purpose was violence. They came out of the Tier 1 after another, and each one was the size of a small moon, and I lost count somewhere past 30 because by then I'd stopped breathing. The whole station went silent. Every channel. Hundreds of people, all of us frozen, all of us watching these gray giants pour out of the void. And then a signal hit our relay. It wasn't aimed at us. It was a broadcast. Open, loud, shouted across every frequency in the system at once, so that the Severed would hear it, so that we would hear it, so that the dead colonies behind us would hear it if anyone was left to listen. It was a voice, a human voice, speaking in trade standard, accented strange, rough and tired, and absolutely without fear. I will never forget the words as long as I live. This is Admiral Cole Damaris, Earth Coalition 3rd Fleet. We received a distress call from Haldra Station. We apologize for the delay. A pause just long enough. We came as fast as we could. The whole observation ring erupted. I can't describe the sound. It wasn't cheering, not at first. It was more like a sob that 500 people made at the same time. Syl grabbed me, both arms, fingers digging in, and she was crying and laughing at once and saying my name over and over. And I realized I was crying too. All of us crying at this ugly gray fleet that had appeared out of nothing to stand between us and the end. They'd come, they'd actually come. But here's the thing I didn't understand yet, the thing that still gives me chills when I think about it. The humans hadn't just arrived. They'd arrived knowing exactly what they were flying into. They'd seen the same projections we had. They knew it was 40 Severed warships. They knew the Severed had eaten 9 systems and never lost. They knew, going in, that the smart move, the survivable move, was to evacuate us and run. They didn't run. They formed up. I watched them do it, those gray giants sliding into a wall of metal between the station and the Severed fleet, and there was something so deliberate about it, so calm, that it took me a moment to understand what I was seeing. They weren't there to save us and flee. They were there to fight. The Severed stopped. That's the part I always come back to. In all the records, in everything anyone knew about the Severed, they had never once stopped. They came, they took, they moved on. They were a tide. Tides don't hesitate. The Severed hesitated. 40 black ships, frozen in the void, facing a wall of gray that had appeared from nowhere, shouting that it was sorry for being late. I think, and I'll never know for sure, I think the Severed had no idea what they were looking at. I think for the first time in their long, terrible advance, they'd met something that didn't fit the pattern. Tova's voice came over the station calm, and there was something in it I'd never heard before. Hope, maybe, raw and disbelieving. All stations, this is command. Hold position, do not interfere, we have friends. And then the human channel opened again. Not the broadcast this time. A direct line, station to fleet. The same voice, Admiral Damaris, but quieter now, almost gentle. Haldra Station, this is 3rd Fleet Actual. Who am I speaking with? Tova answered. I could hear her through the open comm and through the walls at once. This is Station Commander Tova Hess. Admiral, we'd given you up. It's been 3 years. I know, he said. Your message took 14 months to reach us. We've been burning hard ever since. I'm sorry it wasn't faster. I'm sorry it was so close. You're here, Tova said. Her voice broke on it. You're actually here. We're here. A pause. Commander, I'm going to be straight with you because you've earned it. What's coming is going to be ugly. 40 of them, 22 of us. The math isn't kind. My heart dropped. 22. I'd thought there were more. The void had made them look like an army, and there were only 22. But here's the other math, Damaris went on. Every system those things ate, they ate because nobody stood in front of them. Nobody made them pay. We're going to change that arithmetic today. We're going to make them understand that the quiet reach has a price. A beat. Get your people away from the windows, Commander. You don't need to see this. We did not get away from the windows. Not one of us. 500 Tessari packed into every observation port on the station, faces pressed to the glass, because there are some things you have to witness even when you're told not to. Syl wouldn't have moved if I'd carried her. Neither would I. The Severed fired first. I don't have the words for what the void looks like when 40 warships open up at once. The black filled with light. Beams and projectiles and things I had no names for, all of it pouring toward the human wall. And I screamed, I think we all screamed, because surely nothing could survive that. Surely the gray ships would just disappear. They didn't disappear. They took it. The lead human ships angled into the fire, and their hulls lit up where the beams struck, and pieces tore loose and spun away, and they kept coming. They absorbed that first salvo on their faces like it was weather, like it was rain, and they did not break formation and they did not slow. And then they fired back. If the severed volley was light, the human answer was the absence of it, a darkness that moved, mass drivers throwing slugs so fast the eye couldn't track them, only the result. A severed warship simply came apart. One moment a faceted black shape, the next an expanding cloud of debris and frozen air. No drama, no explosion like in the old stories, just there and then not there. The observation ring went insane. People were pounding the glass, shouting, weeping. Syl was screaming something I couldn't make out, her face wild, alive in a way I hadn't seen in months. The humans broke formation. Not retreat, the opposite. They drove straight into the severed fleet, into the middle of it, 22 ships against 40, and they did the thing the old traders had warned about, the thing I'd thought was just a joke. They refused to lose. I want to tell you it was a clean victory. It wasn't. I watched a human ship die. One of the gray giants caught a concentrated volley, 3 severed vessels firing as one, and it cracked. This terrible slow cracked down its spine, and the lights along its hull went dark section by section. It was dying. We could all see it was dying. It didn't stop. That dying ship turned, burning, breaking, venting its crew into the void, and it accelerated. Straight into the 3 severed ships that had killed it. It didn't fire. It was past firing. It just aimed itself, all that mass and momentum, and it rammed them. The light when it hit washed out the whole observation ring. We all flinched back. When the glare faded, there was nothing left of any of them. The human ship, the 3 severed, gone. A scar of cooling debris where 4 warships had been. The whole station went silent again. A different silence. The silence of watching people die for you. Why, Syl whispered. Why would they do that? They don't even know us. I didn't have an answer. I still don't, not a clean one, but I think about it every day. Admiral Damaris's voice came over the comm again, in the middle of all that fire. Steady. He sounded somehow like a man directing traffic. Haldra Station, you still with me? Tova's answer was choked. We're here, Admiral. We saw your ship, the one that. That was the Resolute, he said quietly. Captain Myra Voss, 210 crew. A pause that had a whole eulogy in it. They knew the call. We all knew the call before we came. You don't leave a debt like the one we owed you unpaid. You owed us nothing, Tova said. We're nobody. We're a relay station at the edge of the dark. You sent a message, Damaris said. And the message said, if the treaty means anything, come now. A beat. It means something. It means everything. That's the whole point of a promise, Commander. It's only worth anything when it costs you. I had to sit down when he said that, right there on the deck of the observation ring. Syl sat down with me, still holding my hand, and we listened to a human explain to us why he'd brought 22 ships to die at the edge of nowhere for people he'd never met. Because they'd promised. That was the whole reason. That was enough. The battle was not over, not even close. And I'll tell you the rest of it, the part where it got worse before it got better, the part where the Severed did something none of us expected, the part where 500 unarmed Tessari on a relay station found out they had one more thing to give. But I have to stop here for a moment, because there's something I need you to understand before I go on. We thought we were alone. For 3 years we thought we were alone. We'd done the math, and the math said no one was coming, and we'd made our peace with dying in the dark. We'd buried ourselves already. We'd said our goodbyes. We'd decided that hope was a thing we couldn't afford. And the whole time, the whole 3 years, a fleet was burning toward us through the black. 22 ships and their crews, eating up the distance, knowing what they were flying into, not turning back. We were never alone, we just couldn't see them yet. I think about that more than anything else from those years. How the help was already on its way, the whole time we were grieving. How the dark looked empty right up until the moment it didn't. So if you take one thing from an old signals officer telling a long story, take that. The void looks empty, it usually isn't. Syl leaned her head on my shoulder there on the deck with the battle still burning outside the glass. You were wrong, she said, about hope. You know that, right? I know, I said. Say it. I was wrong. She smiled. I felt it against my shoulder more than saw it. Good, she said. Now watch, I don't think they're done. She was right. They weren't done. Neither were we. So where was I? Right, the battle. 22 human ships against 40 Severid, with 500 of us watching from the windows like children watching a storm we should have run from. I told you it got worse before it got better. Let me tell you how. The humans were winning. I want to be clear about that because of what came next. They were winning. They'd lost the Resolute and 2 others by then. I watched all 3 go, but they'd torn the Severid fleet to ribbons. Where there'd been 40 black ships, there were maybe 20 now, and those 20 were scattered, broken up, no longer that perfect rehearsed formation. The humans had done the impossible. They'd made the tide hesitate, and then they'd made it bleed. And the Severid, for the first time in their long history, did something that nobody had ever seen them do. They changed their minds about the target. Syl noticed it first. She always noticed things first. She'd spent her whole life reading the small signs, which plant was wilting, which person was about to break, and she read the void the same way. Ren, she said, gripping my arm. They're turning. Look, they're not shooting at the humans anymore. I looked. She was right. A cluster of Severid ships, maybe 8 of them, had pulled out of the fight. They weren't running. They were re-aiming, swinging away from the human fleet, slow and deliberate, lining up a new heading. It took me a moment to understand the geometry. When I did, my blood went cold. They were lining up on us. On the station. I think I understood it before anyone said it out loud. The Severid had figured out they couldn't win the ship fight. They'd never lost before, and now they were losing, and whatever passed for thought in those black holes had landed on the only move that made sense. If they couldn't beat the humans, they could still take the thing the humans had come to protect. They could kill us, all 500 of us, and they could do it before the humans could stop them. Command, I said into the comm, and my voice was steady, which surprised me. Command, 8 Severid contacts breaking off, bearing on the station. They're coming for us. Tova's voice came back hard and fast. I see them. Admiral, Admiral, do you see this? I see it, Damaris. And for the first time there was something in his voice. Not fear, strain, the sound of a man doing math he didn't like. They're trying to bleed us, force us to choose, hold them off or take the kill we can't afford to give up. Then come back, Tova said. Admiral, come back, defend the station. If I pull my ships off the line to screen you, the rest of their fleet regroups and we lose everything. If I stay on the line, those 8 reach you in 90 seconds. A pause. Commander, I can save the station or I can win the battle. I don't think I can do both. The whole comm went silent. And in that silence, I learned something about Tova Hess that I'll carry to the end of my days. Then win the battle, Tova said. I heard it, Syl heard it. 500 of us heard our commander say it, calm as still water. Commander, Damaris started. You heard me, Admiral. Win the battle, finish them. If you save us and lose, then they just come back next year and eat us anyway, and your dead crews bought nothing. Win, and the quiet reach stays lit. A breath. We knew the odds when we stayed behind. We're the 500 who volunteered to die buying time. Let us buy it. I looked at Syl. She was looking at me. Neither of us said anything. There was nothing to say. We'd known this might be the shape of it from the start. We just let ourselves forget for a few bright minutes watching the humans fight. We'd let ourselves hope it would be clean. Hope's a cruel thing sometimes. It shows you the door right before it closes it. 90 seconds, Syl said quietly. That's not long. No, I said. I'm glad you're here, she squeezed my hand. I didn't want to do the dark alone, you remember. I remember. And then Damaris's voice came back on the line and it had changed again. Gone hard, gone furious. The sound of a man who had just decided to do something stupid. No, he said. Admiral, Tova started. I said no, Commander, with respect. You don't get to make that call. It's my station. And it's my fleet, and I did not burn 3 years through the black to watch 8 overgrown rocks murder the people who called us. That is not happening. Not today, not while I'm breathing. A snap of commands off mic fast to his own crews. Then back to us. Haldra Station, I need everything you've got. Every ounce of power in that ring. Can you hear me? Tova, bewildered. We're a relay station, Admiral. We don't have weapons. I don't need weapons. I need your reactor. Your relay was built deep, deep enough to punch a signal across the sector, yes. Oh, yes. Then it can punch something else. His voice came fast now, urgent. Listen carefully. I'm sending 2 ships to screen you, 2. It's all I can spare, and it's not enough to stop 8, not on their own. But if you overload your relay array and dump everything into a forward burst on my mark, you can blind them, scramble their sensors. Buy my 2 ships the seconds they need to do the rest. You understand what I'm asking? I understood. We all did. He wasn't asking us to be saved. He was asking us to fight. 500 unarmed civilians on a relay station, and the human admiral wasn't asking us to hide. He was handing us a part of the plan. He was treating us like we mattered to the outcome, like we were soldiers too. I have served a long time since that day. I have never been given a greater gift than being asked to help. What followed was chaos, but it was our chaos, and that made all the difference. Tova didn't hesitate. Engineering, can we overload the array? The chief engineer, a wiry old Tessari named Donal, came back instantly. We can blow it. Whether we can aim it is another question. We'd have to bypass every safety. Manually. There's no time to do it from the panel. Somebody has to be physically at the array junction when it goes, holding the relays open, and commander when it discharges. That junction is not a place anybody walks away from. Silence. Syl let go of my hand. I knew before she moved. I knew the way you know a thing in your gut before your mind catches up. I grabbed for her and she was already standing, already stepping back, that stubborn light in her eyes, the one that had no patience for despair. Syl, no. Somebody's got to keep the lights on, Ren. She smiled at me. It was the saddest, bravest thing I've ever seen. It was always going to be somebody. Might as well be the one who isn't scared of the dark. You are scared of the dark. Caught me, she said, like before, exactly like before. Stay where I can hear you, all right, on the comm. Talk to me while I do it. I don't, her voice caught. I don't want to do this part alone either. And then she was running. Down the corridor, toward engineering, toward the array junction, and I was running after her. And Donal's voice was already on the comm walking her through it, fast and grim, and Tova was shouting positions. And outside the glass 8 black ships were closing on a station full of people who had just decided all at once that they were not going to die quietly after all. I couldn't go all the way with her. They wouldn't let me pass the blast doors. Donal sealed the junction with Syl inside and me on the other side, my hands flat against the metal, and the only thing between us was the comm. So I talked to her. I kept my promise. I'm here, I said. Syl, I'm right here. I know. Her voice came back tight, focused. I could hear her working the clack of relays, the hum of the array winding up. Donal, is this the one? The blue housing? That's it, pull it and hold it. Don't let go no matter what happens. Ren, keep her talking, her heart rate's all over the readout. You hear that, I said. You're scaring the doctor, slow down. She laughed, shaky, but real. Tell the doctor my heart rate is appropriate to the situation. 40 seconds to contact, Tova's voice cut in. Human screen ships are in position, 2 of them holding the line. I pressed my forehead to the door. Sil, talk to me, tell me something, anything. A pause. The hum was building now, a deep vibration I could feel in my teeth, in my bones, in the deck. When I was a girl, she said, back on the homeworld there was this hill behind my mother's house, and at night you could climb it and see the whole sky. No station lights, no nothing, just the stars. Her breath was ragged now, the array fighting her. And I used to think all those lights up there, somebody's looking back. Somebody out there is looking back at me. I used to wave at them. Stupid, right? A little girl waving at the stars. It's not stupid, I said, my voice broke. Sil, it's not. 20 seconds, Tova said. They came, Sil whispered. Ren, do you understand? All those years I thought we were alone out here, and they came. Somebody was looking back the whole time. A sound, half sob, half laugh. I was right to wave. Sil. Mark, Damaris roared over the comm. Haldra Station now, give me everything. Goodbye, Ren, Sil said. I'm glad it was you. At the window, I'm glad. And she pulled the relay. The whole station screamed. Not the people, the metal. Every plate, every strut, every bolt, all of it crying out at once as the reactor dumped its entire soul into the relay array in a single burst. The lights died. The gravity stuttered. I was thrown against the blast door, and for one endless moment the whole world was sound and shaking and dark. And outside in the void the relay fired. It wasn't a weapon. Damaris was right about that. It was a signal, but a signal so violent, so total, so impossibly loud, that it hit the 8 severed ships like a physical thing. It blinded them, scrambled every sensor, drowned every system in noise, left them deaf and dumb and blind in the dark just for a few seconds. A few seconds was all the humans needed. The 2 screen ships, those 2 gray giants Damaris had peeled off the line, went through the blinded Severid like a blade through water. I didn't see it. The station was dark. The windows were dead. I was lying against a blast door with my ears ringing. But I heard it on the comm. I heard the human captains calling targets, calm and quick and merciless. And I heard the Severid ships die one after another. And I heard Damaris's voice, distant and fierce, saying, good, good, that's it, finish them. And then it was quiet. The reactor caught. The lights flickered back on, dim, emergency orange. Gravity steadied. I was still pressed against the blast door, and I was still saying her name into the comm. Sil, answer me, Sil. Nothing. Sil, please. Nothing. The junction was a dead channel. Just static. Just the dark she'd been so afraid of, and her in the middle of it, alone after all, no matter how hard I'd tried to keep my promise. I don't remember much of the next part. They tell me Donal had to pull me away from the door. They tell me I fought him. I don't remember. What I remember is the silence on the station, the kind that comes after. 500 people who had been ready to die, suddenly not dying and not knowing what to do with all the life they had left over. Nobody cheered. It wasn't that kind of victory. It was the kind you pay for. The battle in the void was over. The Severid fleet, what was left of it, had broken. The remaining ships fled back into the deep, the first time in their history they had ever run from anything. The quiet reach was saved. 9 systems avenged. A tide turned at the edge of nowhere by 22 ships and a relay station and a woman who wasn't scared of the dark. Admiral Damaris came aboard a few hours later. I want to tell you about him because he wasn't what I expected. He was small, smaller than us, of course. Humans always are, but small even for a human. Gray, tired in a way that went past his body into something underneath. He moved through the station slow, and he stopped to talk to everyone, and when he got to me, somebody must have told him. He stopped a long time. You're Ren Velko, he said. The signals officer, you were on the comm with her. I couldn't speak, I just nodded. He was quiet for a moment. Then he said, I lost 41 crew today, plus the Resolute, plus the ones on the 2 screen ships that didn't make it. He looked at me with those tired human eyes. Every single one of them knew the odds before we jumped in. Every one of them voted to come anyway. We took a vote, son. Out in the black 3 years from home. We voted on whether to answer a distress call from people we'd never met, knowing it might kill us all. Why, I managed, the same question Syl had asked. Why would you? Because somebody asked, he said simply. Because the message said if the treaty means anything. He shook his head slow. You know what most species do with a treaty when keeping it gets expensive? They find a reason it doesn't apply. They find the fine print. Humans tried that too for a while early on. Didn't work out for us. We learned the hard way that a promise you only keep when it's cheap isn't a promise at all. It's just a convenience wearing a promise's clothes. He put a hand on my shoulder. He had to reach up to do it. Your friend kept her promise, he said. She kept the lights on. 8 ships were going to murder 500 people and she walked into the dark to stop them, and she did. You understand, she didn't die for nothing. She died for everything, for every person on this station, for every person in every system that thing was going to eat next. His grip tightened. Don't you ever let anyone tell you she was nobody from a relay station at the edge of the dark. She turned the war. She did. Remember that. I'm telling you now so that you'll remember it too. Her name was Syl Marn. She ran the hydroponics deck. She was missing 2 fingers and she had a laugh you could hear 3 corridors over, and she was scared of the dark and she walked into it anyway. She was right to wave at the stars. Somebody was looking back. That was a long time ago now. The quiet reaches lit still. More than lit, it's a frontier now, full of life, ships coming and going, children who have never heard of the Severid running through corridors that used to be the last window before the end. Haldra 9 is a monument now. They kept the observation ring exactly as it was. There's a plate on the deck right where Syl and I sat and watched the void crack open. It has her name on it. And a list. 210 for the Resolute, 41 for the fleet. All the human dead, all the names. And at the bottom alone hers. I go back sometimes. I sit on the deck where we sat. I look out the window at the dark. People still ask me what it felt like. That night. The waiting, the silence, the moment the humans came. And I've finally figured out how to answer them after all these years. It felt like being wrong, I tell them. The best kind of wrong there is. Because we'd done the math. We'd decided. We'd buried ourselves and said our goodbyes and convinced ourselves that hope was a luxury we couldn't afford out there in the dark. We were so sure we were alone. And the whole time, the whole 3 years, they were coming. Burning through the black toward people they'd never met because of a promise written on a piece of paper everyone else had forgotten. We were never alone. Not for 1 minute of it. We just couldn't see them yet. That's the thing I want to leave you with. The thing Syl understood before any of us, waving at the stars from a hill behind her mother's house. The void looks empty. It almost always does. But somebody out there is looking back. And if you ever send a message into the dark, if you ever find yourself at the edge of everything, certain that no one is coming, I want you to remember the gray ships that came out of nowhere, late and battered and absolutely without fear, with an admiral's voice on every frequency saying the truest words I've ever heard. We received your distress call. We apologize for the delay. We came as fast as we could.